Okay, hang up and
Yes.
tell
No,
them,
Alvin, stand by.
tell them to go ahead and go.
The point being is, pre-program our committee meetings, just keep it moving, just put them out there. Like, just record them like our transportation committee. I think we probably trying to do a lot by trying to go live, and we don't have command of this quite yet. And it's not that it's us. It's the
I'm checking on it right now, Commissioner Robinson.
Yeah, we're good. I'm just chatting. We're good. But you get my point, Madam Chair. It's like, come on.
Mm-hmm.
Program it, like, pre-program it, put it out there, let them feed on it, however they want to, but
Yeah. I'm trying to get them
we
going.
guess we got people who are in here that we've
We're
got,
streaming.
Okay.
Okay, we're live.
All right.
We're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. All right. Please allow the Douglas County Board of Commissioners Finance Committee as of April 20, 2020 come to order. As is our normal Finance Committee, we're going to go around, we're going to go around the screen in essence. Guys, please consider this like our normal Finance Committee. I'm going to go from our lead first, and Mark will go to you and go around like we normally do, and our guests as well. And we just want to do it for the record. So I'm Kelly Robinson. I'm the chairman of the Finance Committee, and that's it. Mark?
Mark T. County Administrator.
Jennifer Hallman, Finance Director.
Dr. Ramona Jackson-Jones, Vice Chairman of the Finance Committee.
Sabrina Cochran, Assistant Finance Director.
David Corbin, Financial Advisor to the County with Terminus.
Matthew Arrington, Financial Advisor with Terminus. All right. Anybody else?
Carrie Broughton, Financial Advisor with Terminus.
Welcome, Carrie. Thank you. Anybody else that's formally here for the agenda? All right. So with that being said, we're going to go right into it. Director Hallman, do we have anybody that's here to speak? Any of my commissioners want to weigh in? If not, we're going to just jump right into our agenda. Director Hallman, please, let's move forward with our first order of business, which should be the meeting minutes.
Yes, we have sent the meeting minutes out, and we just need a motion and a second.
We're going to get a motion to adopt the meeting minutes of the Finance Committee of our last assemblage, please.
So move.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Anybody want to discuss those meeting minutes? If not, can I get all in favor? Say aye.
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 All right, we got to do that again. My bad. We won't be able to count. All right, so we're going to go around the room and just say our names and our positions. So Kelly Robinson, aye.
Ramona Jackson-Jones, aye.
Jennifer Hallman, aye.
Mark T. aye.
Sabrina Cochran, aye.
All right, so the motion carries unanimously. Thanks, guys, for that adjustment. So, Director Hallman, next.
All right, the next we have the FY20 budget review. We have Terminus with us, and they have a PowerPoint presentation to be presented today to talk about their framework that they're providing guidance to all of us, me and my staff as well. And so I'll hand it over to David or Matthew or Carrie.
Well, look, we appreciate it. And again, let me just open up by saying I hope everyone is doing well and still trying to live their best life under the circumstances. I would rather turn this over to Matthew and Carrie and then maybe open it up for questions immediately after that so we can give some more context or get some specific questions answered for all of you as we go about this process. The one thing I do want to make sure or reiterate for everyone that's listening is we don't have a lot of data at this point. We do know, I think this is a proactive step in building out the county's financial platform. So much of what you're going to hear today is building off of things that many of you we've all worked on together over the last couple of years. So having said that, let me turn it over to Matthew and Carrie and let them present to you what we have, and then we'll be able to answer questions afterwards.
All right, before you dig in, one comment. Director Hallman, let's validate for the public that this Terminus being here is obviously the beginning of a renewal of their contract, but specifically the full board of commissioners asked them to help us come up with a framework and how to deal with both our pandemic situation, but also this year's budget in light of that. Is that accurate? I'm trying to give context.
Yes, that is accurate.
Okay. All right. So we just want to give context of just for that. So Matthew, go ahead and take over, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Carrie or Jennifer, do you guys have the presentation, or do you want me to pull it up?
I will pull it up.
Okay, thank you.
Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right, if you can to slide 3, please, Carrie. Thank you. And we will make sure everyone gets a copy of this. I know we sent it to Jennifer earlier, so you will get a copy of this. But again, good afternoon. I'm Matthew Arrington with Terminus Municipal Advisors, financial advisor to the county. And today I just want to talk a little bit about why we're here and exactly what it is we're looking at. The first thing that the county and its citizens needs to know that you guys are not alone in this situation. Obviously, this is going to have a ripple effect throughout the economy as far as the virus goes. We're watching everything on the federal level, the state level, and what other counties within Georgia are doing. As you may or may not know, the governor is supposed to give a press conference today at 4 p.m., so we will be listening live to that to get a little guidance. I'm sure you guys will as well to figure out what's best for Douglas County. Our objective in going through this whole exercise is to create and incorporate a model to address the uncertainties going on with the county's financials. What we want to do is we want to look at the sales tax collections. As many of you may know, as David said earlier, we will really not be able to have any of that data for probably about another month or two, because the way the sales tax collections come into the county, they're about 30 to 60 days behind. So we won't really be able to see what kind of collections happened in the month of April until probably sometime closer to June. So we're going to track it. Part of our model that we are looking at, we are looking not just at short term as it pertains to how the economics will be affected this summer and from this spring. We're going to look at the trends, looking at the tax digest impact potential and prepare for the 2021 budget. So we're going to track those things. We will let the county see the results of those. Obviously, the Board of Commissioners can take that data and look at what decisions best suits the county. There will be some decisions that need to be made, but we really can't say at this point in time exactly what those are. The other thing that we want to do, and we've been in conversation with Madam Chair, as well as the Vice Chair and Jennifer on this, we want to look at what kind of assistance is available to the county on a federal level. We'll summarize that last after Carrie goes through the model. And then we also want to look at what are some other counties around the state and around the country, what are they doing to help their citizens? So we want to look at help for the county and what kind of help the county can provide. But before we do that, let us go a little bit into the model, and Carrie kind of take us through what that model is and what kind of questions we hope to be able to answer from going through that. Carrie?
Thank you, Matthew. So we are creating a financial model that is unique to this specific situation. We're going to be going through these 4 steps that you see here. This is our process. And so basically we're going to be utilizing some of the financial data that we already have, the historical data, and then utilizing some of the models that we have created for the county before to create a custom model that is flexible and that is accurate. We want it to be flexible so that when we conduct some of the scenarios, which is essentially a sensitivity analysis, that we're able to analyze the revenues and the expenditures and be able to make flexible scenarios. And our third step is to analyze and assess. So we want to be able to analyze those scenarios and see, are there opportunities for revenue recovery? And as Matthew mentioned, the federal government, they are providing, they are implementing initiatives that will aid states and local governments as far as helping to provide revenue recovery. And then are there opportunities for expense reduction? So we want to be able to identify all of that, and then also assessing any potential revenue shortfalls and any potential expenditure increases as well. Also, moving forward from there, we will be able to create our recommendations. And we want to make recommendations that are able to support real-time decisions. As Matthew stated, we're going to be monitoring the data that is coming in, the actuals that are coming in. So we need to make sure that we are constantly analyzing that and assessing it. There is a 30-day lag on the sales tax. So we need to make sure that this month we may see just slightly a little bit of that because it will reflect March collections, but we really won't start to see that impact until May. So we just want to make sure that we are modifying those recommendations based on the numbers that are coming in. And the next few slides are pretty much just examples of some of the previous models that we have created for the county. And these are some of the models that we are incorporating into this unique model that is specific to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we won't just be looking at it from a macro level, we're going to be looking at it from a micro-based sensitivity analysis. So not just from an annual perspective, but looking at it from a month-to-month basis and making our recommendations based on that. And as you can see, these are just further examples of some of the models that we have created previously.
And Carrie, while you're on that, let me add something real quick for context. You know, for the last several years, y'all have had us work on long-term modeling, extending the county's financial maturity. You know, we're effectively building on that by sort of reversing. At this point, we're going to go after, as Carrie had indicated, on a micro level. A lot of our data has been aggregated to an annual basis, even though we looked at what those inputs were. We're going to now have to evaluate those inputs. We're going to change the cycle. Instead of looking at them annually, what we'd start doing is looking at them monthly and then trying to project out where we think things are going to go. I mean, we're focused on sales tax right now because that's the most immediate thing. If you recall, a good portion of your money comes in the last quarter of the year. So longer term, you know, we're going to have to figure out what that looks like, and if there is a recession as a result of, I think there's generally going to be a recession. How long and how deep that recession will be will eventually impact your digest to some degree, and then we're going to have to look at what comes out of that discussion. So I just wanted you to know that we're not reverse engineering, but we're literally incorporating a short-term module into the developing modules that we've created for you in the past. So it's all connected. It's all you know, we're not starting from behind. The good news is I think the county overall has been proactive about managing its financial future, and we've been pretty clear about what that looks like and how it looks right now. And now we just need to basically go back to a micro level and start almost managing the checkbook on almost a quarterly basis, so you have the right information to make real-time policy decisions that are supported by real data whenever that data kind of comes in. So I just wanted to make sure y'all at least understood that portion of it. Go ahead, Carrie, I'm sorry.
Yes, thank you, David. And as Matthew mentioned earlier, there are several initiatives that the federal government have put into place, and we just want to make sure that we are assisting the county in getting their fair share of whatever funds they're eligible for. So, for example, you have the HR 748 CARES Act, which I'm sure many of you are aware of, and it created the Coronavirus Relief Fund, and that's $4.1 billion that was allocated to the state of Georgia. So we just want to make sure that Douglas County is getting its fair share of that and making sure that we can help to provide access to that. The Department of Justice, they made funds available as well, and currently the estimated eligible allocation is roughly $52,000. And then we also have the Federal Reserve. They created the Municipal Liquidity Facility, which is basically a program that essentially allows the Federal Reserve to purchase eligible notes from eligible issuers. And so with that, we will need to make sure that the county is working directly with the states to be able to participate in that. So we just want to make sure that we are making beneficial recommendations and that we are continuing to monitor the situation. And with that, I will turn it back over to Matthew.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you, David. I think that's really about it. The one thing I just wanted to mention that Kara did mention a Department of Justice allocation from that $850 million, of which the county is going to see, let's see here, about 52,000. I just wanted to make sure that the committee knows that Douglasville, the city, is they're already getting their own portion. So your portion is coming to the county, is strictly for the county. The city of Douglasville is getting an additional $62,000 for COVID-related expenses. So the county shouldn't have to share anything in which it receives. The county will have to get their funds directly from the state. One part of the CARES Act was that it was only for entities that had a population over 500,000. So within the state of Georgia, I think that was really only not Douglas, but Fulton and Atlanta. So the county will basically be getting its share based on population directly from the state. And she also mentioned the municipal liquidity facility. Again, that is something that is there as a tool. The good news is the county just closed on its TAN, so we hopefully won't have a cash flow problem. But the good news is that basically what this says is that the Federal Reserve will enter into a TAN with the county if there was a cash flow issue. So while we don't want to be going through this, the good news is there are several things that are in place to replenish any kind of fund balance that the county may need to use. So David, do you have any closing thoughts? That's all I had on this.
I think that about sums it up. I think it'd be more fruitful if we can answer specific questions from the board.
Okay, well, so just to let everybody know, so Tiffany is working with fire chief and the sheriff's office on the 52,000, and then I know the CARES Act came out. It was for 500,000 plus citizens. We got notification late Friday that we needed to apply for it anyway, so we did just in case. They said that they realized that it was for 500,000 plus, but they advised for everybody to apply for it, so we applied anyway.
All right, very good. All right, so we'll keep this tight. I'm going to open this up, obviously for other committee members, but I'm going to make a statement that says that, as you know, David, it's always about data. Data is input. The accuracy of your data and the depth of your data helps improve the quality of your decision making. It just improves it. You can make decisions without data and live life, but you can have a richer outcome perhaps with the input of data. We appreciate you guys coming on board from the very beginning when we went to obviously New York and we got our first obviously SPLOST that we talked about this morning, with a 1.71 rate. We appreciate the time you spent with us even to recently with our TANs, but a 0.62%. You just don't arbitrarily get those type of returns. I mean, there has to be decisions that were made along the way in which those rating agencies and those banks look at us and say, how do we handle our financial decision making? We made some good moves. We tried to keep our short-term debt tight, when it was going on, obviously with the SPLOST, and we made some other decisions that it just proved us well. So I think sometimes people see the outcome of it, but there had to be some interdecisions that were made to get to that place where we were qualified for that type of thing. But a lot of that, and some of that was driven by obviously you guys' advisement. You guys are very supported in what obviously what you mean to the county. I mean, that's unanimous across all five of us, and it was iterated this morning. So I just want to state that. But that being said, what I'm looking for out of this is a model that helps us make. I mean, it's almost like decision support. It's got to become a little bit more robust. And I appreciate your point about the long-term capital planning. Obviously, that came out of our trip to New York. There was a policy that we came right back at, and we put a long-term capital policy. And we just recently completed a long-term capital plan, which was the last assignment to your prior engagement with us before we re-upped. So we did take care of all the long-term. And I appreciate the fact that now we got to look at our short-term. But that being said, I think I'm looking for, you mentioned financial maturity, which I've said before, but it's really about the discipline. I mean, it's great that we are able to go after grants and all that, but guys, that's contingent, right? We need to look at a real model that says, okay, tell me the truth. If we drop by 15 points, what can we do? If we gain 15 points or 10 points or 5 points, what can we do? But what I like this exercise to be, it's really about the model, it's the maturity of the decision making. And then if in fact we're able to accomplish some of these other things, I don't want you to have to carry that burden per se. I mean, that'll be taken care of by staff and obviously your recommendations. But we got to get this model right because that's what's going to get us through this. And we need to be, as Madam Chair, it needs to be surgical. It doesn't need to be a butter knife. In other words, it has to be such that, okay, do we really need to do it or not need to do it? So your capacity to be able to forecast, you just get quarterly, monthly, or even to that extent weekly, is going to be important because again, it's the scenario analysis should be trigger based. Like, okay, if this happens, then we do this. I think I want to set the public's expectations. Not you're going to come out with this set of recommendations and the Madam Chair is going to go declare. It's got to be based on triggers over time. We don't know how this is going to play out, and I think that's important to set expectations. Like guys, to your point, you don't have your first set of data not until June. I mean, this is lagging. We still have our obviously property taxes, which really probably won't hit us until next year. We obviously have appeals that may apply this year. It's like there's a lot that goes into this, and so it's really about the model. It's really about us being able to capture all these decisions. Says, okay, guys, it's conditional. So I just want to say that as we walk through this, but also not only about our operating costs. I wanted one caveat was part of our finance committee. Our normal work session this morning was dealing with our SPLOST. All right, so we have two pennies. Right? We have special purpose local option sales tax. We have a local option sales tax, and they're running concurrently. I know the county administrator is working with that to make sure that is obviously captured, but we're going to need, we got to do both. It can't be an isolation. They go hand in hand. So can you at least acknowledge that along the way, that we make sure that that's aligned as well? Obviously, we've got some resources that can help with that, but I need you guys to also acknowledge that we want one dashboard, one financial view of the condition of the county. And we just, and I'll stop there. David, can you address that part, that you acknowledge that there needs to be one view, one dashboard?
Yeah, there certainly will be. I mean, the goal is to be able to provide you with that analysis consistent with your thoughts. So I think we're on the same page with that. Similar to the budget module, again, we're developing it from the ground up and creating what that dashboard is so you can change the inputs as necessary to look at something that's a scenario-based situation versus something that's, an individual item.
All right, so to the point, and again, today's was just to set, again, we welcome you guys back, obviously under contract. And this first assignment is that you're going to take a look at this from I want to call it you're framing this for us. But as far as an actual deliverable, which obviously is one thing to give me the model, it's another to have data in it. The first time that we probably can look at anything from you would be what? June, 2 months? Meaning we get all of April and all of May's data. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. I mean, so right now, what we have in the existing model is your base case, right? Based on the budget that was passed in 2020.
Yep.
We've been able to model that, right? So that's your base case as of today.
Yep.
And at that point, we'll hit the refresh button on that as data comes in real time. So as your staff provides us with the data, we'll coordinate it with them. We'll put that data in real time, and it will drop into that model, so you can see almost like a dashboard, which you refer to. So that will be created for you and available for all the commissioners to see as it comes in.
Right. The other thing I want to make a statement that I think it's acknowledged, to your point, looking at our baseline budget, well, we recognize that whatever assumptions that we had, they obviously may not be realized. And therefore, whether it's revenue or associated costs. So is it, in your mind, do you acknowledge the fact that this is sort of what I want to call it a moment to correct? You talked about recession. Let's talk about it at the local level and say, is this a chance to really just correct our budget? Because recognizing that all bets are off. I mean, we do acknowledge the fact that there may be some softness. Now, how much is it? If we're off by 15%, that doesn't mean 15% of the budget. That just means 1/12 of 15% based on how many months we're off. So just, again, this is for the public because they're watching. Help frame that for me, please.
Yeah, so, I mean, if you want to, in terms of, again, not having new data, but effectively, if you look at your base case, which I can kind of talk to you about now, your base case your base case budget, when it's modeled out in our current cash flow model, effectively, if everything worked out the way it was supposed to, you would have about 30 days worth of cash available in your fund balance at the end of the period. So that assumed a certain level of sales taxes, a certain property tax collection rates of a certain level. So, that's what you're working with. In a perfect world where you had projected appropriately back in the beginning of the year, in the budget you passed, you would have about 30 days worth of fund balance remaining. So you should look at it from that standpoint. So any softness that you're going to get on the revenue side, or your collection rate goes down, or policy actions that you pass between now and then are only going to take that number. I think I'm comfortable saying that I'm not sure that if you budgeted for $10 in revenue that you're going to get 15. The question is, are you going to get the 10, right? And how much damage this is to the 10? What's the probability of you getting less than 10, right, versus more than 10? And so every percentage point less than the $10, less than the dollar you bring in, you have to say, okay, how does that impact ultimately? The county does have a fund balance. They've maintained that policy, which is consistent with the rating that you have. So every dollar that comes in less today, based on a perfect world, you're going to go into your fund balance, right? So look at it that way. So we need to give you that real-time data to match up everything you have to know whether you're going to go into your fund balance, how much and how long you're going to go into your fund balance. That's the issue.
Understood. And again, I think we don't need to belabor it. I think this is sort of what I'm going to call a kickoff of this part of the engagement. I'm going to yield for a moment. Anybody else want to weigh in? Director Hawk, Madam Chair, you want to weigh in?
I think this would be a perfect time if I could go over my COVID-19 revenue recovery expense reduction just worksheet. And it's an opportunity. It's quick wins, certainly, as we wait on the June data to come in. So I'm going to bring that up. Is that okay with you, Chairman of this committee?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going to bring it up and then we'll discuss it. Hopefully, here, I see it. Okay, do you see the information? Can you see it?
No, I can. Yes.
Okay. Finance committee, what I did, the COVID-19 revenue recovery expense reduction worksheet is simply a worksheet. Certainly, it's going to require reforecasting of the 2020 budget. We had some levers that we use. Commissioner, Vice Chairman, or should I say the chairman of this finance committee, you just hit on some of those, which would be the loss, the TABT, the online sales, the projected new growth, and then probably the property tax collection rate, which I believe we looked at 97% going in as we end the year. So those things will have to be recalibrated. But if I looked at some quick win expense reductions, and right now we're going to freeze all pending BRRs, budget improvement requests, and that's already been done by our county administrator. We've freezed all hiring of vacant positions. We've freezed replacement positions unless critical at this point, and that probably would be most likely in our public safety area if that critical need arises. Also, we've put a freeze on our training and professional development. We've frozen our training travel expenses, put a freeze on the training for the meal expenses that certainly is associated with traveling and training. And then also we put a freeze on the overtime we will only use overtime only if necessary. And that most likely will occur in those public safety areas, but I'm urging them to please utilize it carefully. Expense reduction opportunities, there are some others out there I looked at, which would be our office supply, budget cuts, and wanted to reduce our office supplies, which of course deals with the paper and pens and all those things, because a lot of our operations has been actually people are telecommuting. And then all the coffees and creamers and foods and things that we usually buy for just our break rooms, we should see a decline in that significantly because everybody is working or telecommuting. I'll say at least 65% of our staff. The gasoline cost for county vehicles should be down. The electrical, the water and gas costs should be trending down in all facilities due to limited use and also staff telecommuting. Medical insurance and workers' comp claims should be down because telemedicine is certainly should be moving upwards, because that these ERs have really been locked down. You can't really get in there because as a result of COVID-19. Our finance director told me that right now we usually are targeting 25% on medical claims. We are only at 19%. I believe that's what she said. So that's a good thing. Our projected streams of revenue loss, I looked at those, and we know, of course, would be the loss to TABT. We're going to take a hit in courts, the parks and recreation, medical billing, transportation, animal services, libraries, senior services, tax and tag, and property taxes. And those are still, I don't know what that hit looks like until those numbers come out. Some assumptions, David just covered those. David Corbin just covered those assumptions on the next tier, which would be the minimal impact of, for February. Believe it or not, our lost and our lost revenues were in line from almost mirrored 2019. 2020, February 2020, almost mirror 2019. Our local option sales taxes and SPLOS will reflect a moderate loss in revenues in March 2020 as compared to March 2019, simply because we have 2 weeks that was normal in March, but of course, the middle of March, we had the COVID-19 arise. And then our local option sales taxes will provide a clear picture of drastic reductions in local option sales tax and SPLOS revenues in April 2020 as compared to April 29. I looked at some potential revenue windfalls, and those would be significant increase in grocery sales, because I don't know about you all, but I have probably spent more money on food, and I know we will probably put a lot in the gyms when we come out of this, because a lot of people are eating quite a bit. The FEMA reimbursement, certainly looking at that, and just talked about the CARES Act for counties with population under $500,000. And of course, we took big steps last week. I signed off Friday evening about 8 o'clock so we can get the information to Washington. And we said we were just going to even go with those counties that's 500 and above if we got our paperwork in. The HEROES Funding Act is a stimulus package that Commissioner Carpenter discussed earlier and brought to our attention. The coronavirus stimulus package, which is the fire and EMS departments. And then we have the ARC aging and senior grant funding and potential state funding. And then I looked at some economic impact factors. Home foreclosures, certainly we want to take advantage of the neighborhood stabilization program, NSP. Those are the things that I'll be talking to Ron about, and I can't space his last name. Small businesses, revenue loss and closures, those are some things that we may experience. Slow economic recovery for restaurants, gyms, and bars, and then sharp decline in retail sales, emerging recession, which David Corbin mentioned earlier, and then high unemployment rate. Right now, our unemployment rate was the lowest in 50 years, and we already know that the Department of Labor has, Mark Budlin, as the commissioner, has mentioned that those they had more claims in 1 week than they had in 1 year in 2019 of the last year. And then also just a decrease in average household income as a result of layoffs. And also my little sheet, I looked at reopening, the COVID reopening of the economy will occur on several things. It'll be based on Governor Kemp's executive orders, a robust COVID-19 testing program, in which Douglas County, I'm proud to say, we have a testing center here. We've cast a wider net and provided to allow all of our citizens to be tested if they meet those core competencies, such as having the symptoms of COVID-19. Contact tracing and antibody testing is something we need. Treatment and vaccine and social distancing. Face mask is going to be required. Hand sanitizing stations throughout the entire county. That's something we need to look at. Opening, certainly ongoing disinfection of hand washing and metal surfaces, and continuous monitoring. So, but a lot of this is the quick wins I mentioned earlier, things that we're doing now, and then we're waiting on David Corbin and Matthew to pull the remainder of the information together for us so we can look month by month or quarterly by quarter to see how we handle those assumptions that early on that we thought that would mature and give us the type of money we were looking at. Particularly the online sales is still rough. David, let's talk about online sales. Is that, I believe it was approved. I know we may receive some with COVID-19. Can you tell me what the state is discussing in terms of Online sales, has there been any discussions around online sales?
No, I have to, I would have loved to share that with you, but I have not had that discussion at all with the state. I've made an inquiry most recently. Just as you can imagine, the state, the biggest issue right now, and again, this is not a state issue, but the income tax has been pushed back to match the federal deadline of July 15th now from April. So that's been the focus of their discussion, because again, there was a certain amount of money that was expected to come in April. It's now going to come in July if we're lucky.
Yes.
And so I will make a note and reach back out to the state and see if I can report back formally to this board and all the commissioners to where that looks like, what that looks like right now with the Department of Revenue. I think they're all searching for solid footing, right? And that's, I think we're all trying to figure out what does solid footing look like. It's not, we know it's not what it was. And so some areas are down, some other areas are up. So we just need to figure out what that's going to look like. And I'll report back to y'all as soon as I hear.
Okay, thank you so much, David, and I'm gonna yield back to you, Chairman of the Finance Committee. I just wanted to assure our public that we're just not sitting here. We are working on those quick wins, but of course we have some other quarterly things that we're waiting on because we have to have the data, and the data is just not there yet. Right. I yield back to you, Chairman of the Committee, Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Very well stated. Obviously, you've got a very comprehensive understanding, and you've been working with your staff. And so, David, to that point, you've got a baseline budget, revenue and expenses. And obviously, we're going to track and see what were the revenue assumptions that came in. And obviously, we've got some cost adjustments that Madam Chair has already identified. And you're going to reconcile both of those for the full board. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. And so then, therefore, we're already ahead of it. To Madam Chair's point, there's some things that are already being done. But that's in light of the fact that we had some assumptions that we made regarding revenues, and we won't know until then. But to Madam Chair's point, as we've tried to do, we've tried to be anticipatory. Let's not wait until it happens. That's the whole point of modeling. That's the whole point of getting ahead of this thing. Is you don't wait to the last minute to go to the bank when you need something. You don't wait to the last minute to begin to model decision making when you're in a crisis. So, Madam Chair, I appreciate the thoughtfulness of sort of what you presented. I think it goes a long way. So, David, I think you got it. We don't have to belabor this. This was sort of a kickoff. But you see what we're working with. We got our baseline budget. And obviously, as the data comes in, you've got some short-term quick wins that Madam Chair has already implemented. And we just need you to reconcile the two and come up with sort of some actions that we can take going forward. Are we clear on the assignment?
Yeah, we are clear. I just want to make sure, again, this is not being done sort of that, outside of the. We're working with your staff, with Jennifer and Mark, to basically make sure that information gets disseminated, it's accurate. So it's a team effort.
Understood. Understood. We just want to acknowledge your role. But again, Madam Chair, anything else? I want to keep us moving. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Thank you, David. And I'll provide you with the worksheet, or either Mark will. Okay. Just those are my quick wins.
I appreciate it. No problem. Thank you.
Okay. Director Hallman, do you want to weigh in on this?
No, other than like David said, we've been working together and providing the information so that we can get ready when the numbers do start rolling in. We can start applying those numbers to the model and see what kind of impact it's going to have. We know it's going to have a negative impact, but we just don't know to what extent.
All right, sounds good. County Manager, County Administrator, are you okay?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're on board with everything David's working on.
Okay, and you do still acknowledge the fact about the SPLOST that needs to be incorporated for a single view of our financial condition?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we're working on that as well.
And yeah, I know you're driving it. Okay. All right, so Director Hallman, if there's nothing else that we need to discuss regarding this, I'd like to keep the agenda moving.
Yes. Are you ready for the next on the agenda is the December 2019 report.
Okay. I think, David, and I don't know if you can just stick around. There is a conversation we're going to have regarding miscellaneous about some actions that the board is looking at from a funding perspective. It's not necessary to weigh in because something, to your point made earlier, there will be some policy decisions that we will make prior to you getting your work done. And I just think you need to just hear it if you haven't already heard or saw our work session, but specifically, what do we do in the short term, recognizing that we've got, $10 need, $1, but also there's the need to address the community needs as well. It's not always about administration. So there was a conversation that was held this morning. We're trying to appropriate toward Madam Chair in her current role in sort of her executive mode, that makes sure she has what she needs to get things done according to certain buckets. I don't want that to fall on deaf ears, and I need to acknowledge it publicly that this was coming back to the Finance Committee. Again, it's something for you just to acknowledge, Dave, like, okay, we're making that decision. We recognize where we are. We talked about this 3 weeks ago, and we sort of have kicked the can. We recognize that the Fed is doing something. We get the state, but obviously at a local level, what part can we play? Obviously, we can't put 50% down, but we probably can put 5 on it. And so we've got to make a hard decision going into tomorrow. So part of out of this Finance Committee at the end of this meeting is to come up with a recommendation for a rounding out of sort of what the board is currently thinking. So that's just FYI. If you can hang in there to the end of the meeting, we appreciate it.
No
just
problem.
to hear it. But okay, Director Hallman, keep moving. Let's keep it moving.
Okay.
Fine.
I'm going to be sharing my screen.
Yep.
Okay. So let me.
You're fine.
Can you see that?
I can.
Mm-hmm.
You can?
If
Yeah,
I
just-
see it, we're good.
All right.
Jennifer, what we're looking at right now is the list of files on your computer, not the document.
Flip it, just click it open.
Yeah, I did. Hold on one second. I had it earlier. Let's try this again.
Mm-hmm.
What about now?
No, not yet. Do you have it open in the background?
That's the problem. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to open it in another window.
All right, now let's try it. Now, is that good?
Perfect. Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
perfect. All right, we're going to start with December. Now, do you see December's?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Final
Okay.
unaudited, is that the one?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, what I'll do is just go through this report like we normally do in a finance committee. We're actually going to have 2 reports. This first one, as you see, is the final unaudited for December 31st for our fiscal year end. And then the next report will be as of March 30th, 31st, 2020. So let's just dig into December, how we ended the year now that all of our year-end entries have been entered. We've closed out the year, done all of our accruals and adjustments that were needed. We'll start right here where we talk about, if you remember part of the budget retreat in November, I presented year-end estimates of what I felt like we were going to end 2019 in both revenues and expenditures. So what this table is right here is showing you that we estimated that we were going to get $91.8 million in revenues, plus another $601,000 from tree replacement. So our total estimated general fund revenue was going to be $92.4 million, or $92,444,000. After we closed the books, we actually have received $92,482,000. So we actually received about $38,000 more in revenues than what we had estimated when I came to you in November. The variance in the revenues, you can see this top line is just all of our basic revenues. We were about $280,000 short than what was estimated. We did receive some bond funds from Tuscany Hill Development, so that offset that a little bit. However, those funds are set aside in assigned fund balance. So on the second page, what you'll see is I laid out the largest of the variances from the different revenue categories. And you can see in the real current on digest, real property taxes, we actually got 44.7 million. We estimated 44.8. Our estimate was based on a 96% collection rate, and we actually got 95.7. That was an actual, came under what we estimated, but our prior year revenue, the next category, almost washed that one out. We received about $129,000 more in that revenue. TAVT still came in strong, but it was about $71,000 less than what we had estimated in November of what we were going to end the year with. Our current intangible taxes actually was about $128,000 more. Our property on not on digest came in. This was probably the biggest, other than local option sales tax, variance that we had, and it puzzled me when I first saw it. And Benny is actually our chief appraiser is looking at this because the estimate, this $425,000 estimate, it included about $275,000 of NODs when we went and asked appraisal when we were doing our estimates. So Benny is actually looking into this and finding out why the number in the variance is so large. Hopefully it's just money just hadn't come in yet or hasn't been billed yet, but I'm still waiting on Benny's final analysis of that. Local option sales tax was coming in strong, still came in strong, but the last few months of the year were not as strong as all the other 10 months of the year. So we were about $365,000 short of what we estimated. Our ARC Title III money was about $222,000 more. The next two categories are because of an additional DARE officer for the school system that was approved in July's agenda. So we were able to receive about $90,000 more in that revenue category. Real and personal property commissions were up by $56,000. Public safety fees were up by $44,000. Boarding fees were up by $57,000. State court was down by $152,000. Magistrate court was up by $35,000. Jail surcharge was down by about $67,000. Our investment earnings, as y'all know, as the economy, we started seeing a little bit less interest rate earnings on the last few months of the year. So we didn't quite reach what we estimated, but we still earned more than we had been earning in several years, previous years. Our contributions and donations was up by about $32,000. Our insurance claims were up by about $67,000. And of course, the other category, this is that Tuscany Hills bond money that we had. So what I tried to do is get as close to the $38,000 so that you could see that these were the largest of the variances, some to the positive, some to the negative. But we did end the year very close to what we estimated that we would end the year at. Again, this is our local option sales tax trends. This last or second to last column, you can see of what we were getting every month in local option sales tax. And this would be for the end of the year, and we'll have this table updated for you in our March report. But we received about almost $812,000 more than we did the prior year in 2018. Now that we've looked at, before I go into expenditures, any questions about revenues?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. All right. Expenditures, before factoring in year-end rollovers, overall expenditures were 7.61% under the target percentage, or under budget, the total budget. However, after we factor in the rollover purchase orders, the rollover projects, and the grant amendments, the general fund expenditures ended up being 4.95% under the budget, under the amended budget. We had estimated the general fund would be 6% under, including the rollovers. We said 5%, and then we knew that there was going to be some rollovers. So when you factored those in, we estimated that we were going to be 6% under budget, and we were at 4.95% under budget. Again, this table right here just shows you what the amended budget was at $102 million. Our 2019 actual, we actually spent $94.7 million. We estimated we would spend $94.5 million. So we actually spent a little bit more than projected, but considering you're looking at a $95 million budget, that was a pretty close estimate there. Where the increase came in, and it all is based upon the timing of expenditures, is rollover purchase orders and rollover grants and projects. And what we mean by the rollover POs is there are POs that are open at the end of the year that are legitimate, that need to roll over to the new year because maybe the department did not receive their item or the service, and we did not receive the invoice until the next year, or it wasn't provided until the next year. So we had estimated that we were going to have about $1 million in rollover POs. We actually had just under 1.5. We estimated that we would have some rollover grants and projects of about 800,000, and we actually had about 1.2. So again, I dug a little deeper just to see, okay, what were the main factors? Because this was usually an average. An average of rollover POs for us was about $1 million a year, and an average for rollover grants was about $800,000 a year. So when I dug into the rollover encumbrances, where we had a variance of just under $500,000, there were about 4 different items that happened way late in the year, that items were not paid for yet, so we had to roll over the encumbrances. And the first one was the roof at the fleet building was $154,000. Traffic operations, DOT traffic operations, had some road striping of $131,000. The aquatic center had a boiler that needed to be replaced at $129,000. And there were some sheriff vehicles totaling around $118,000. So these large expenditures or large encumbrances is what primarily made this number go from $1 million to 1.4 or 1.5 million. When you look at the rollover grants, where we had estimated 800,000 and we actually had to roll over about 1.2. Again, I looked at it to see what was some things that maybe stuck out that were anomalies from one year to the next, and I laid these out as well. As you know, we're upgrading the website. Communications department is working with various departments and a vendor to update our website. That had not been encumbered at that point, so we knew we needed to give them funding this year in order to do that project of $125,000. Punkintown Park, there was $100,000 that was allocated in the 2019 budget that, again, hadn't been used yet. I believe it's in the process of being used this year, that needed to be rolled over. The sheriff equipment lease for their equipment on their vehicles at $83,000. The clerk has some deed indexing, a deed indexing project that she works on. It was $80,000 rollover, more than the projected of $100,000 that is normally rolled over. And then we received some money for the SCAP funds. This is for the sheriff's department of about $63,000. So even though we were more than our target here, it is justifiable. I could pinpoint it to exactly what caused those overages. When you scroll down, you can look at our fund balance, how we ended the year. we had a total fund balance of $22 million, with $9 million being unassigned. Therefore, when you look at our unassigned fund balance, we're at 9.51 of expenditures when you include the transfers out. And those transfers out are to our fire and EMS fund. Or you see some agencies, the rating agencies, as well as other people, look at what your fund balance is as a percentage when you do not include transfers out. So I've done it both ways. When you do not, or you exclude transfers out, you're at 10.07% of fund balance, 10.07% of expenditures. Our cash balance, how we ended the year, we had 18.9, almost $19 million. Of this, 13.5 were in short-term investments. We did pay our defined benefit plan retirement contribution of 6.8 in December. And of course, the TAN from last year, not this year, because of course we're talking about 2019, was actually paid off on December the 11th at $18.3 million. Any questions so far?
Nope, keep going.
Okay. 2019 contingency. This is just a spreadsheet that is included in every monthly financial report stating how we used our contingency fund. I don't think that's changed since the last time we reported.
No, it was a good addition. It was a good addition that we thought was important to highlight. So I'm glad you
absolutely.
Yep.
Yes. Then the next page is what I always call the snapshot of the 4 buckets. The general fund bucket, the unincorporated bucket, the fire services and EMS bucket, and the animal control services bucket. This just gives you a snapshot of each of the revenue categories in each of those funds, the expenditure categories in each of those funds. It shows the gain or the losses in each of those funds, the beginning fund balance and the ending fund balance, and then it takes that fund balance, kind of what we've already spoke about, and puts them in different categories of non-spendable, committed, and assigned. And you can see down here that our unassigned is just over $9 million. But we'll go over each of these funds separately. We'll start with the general fund first. And you can see, are y'all there?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
You can see that our total taxes collected was $73.3 million. Our original budget was $70.3. So we did very well. Our TAVT really saw an increase, as well as our local option sales tax was seeing about $100,000 a month per month increase for at least the first 10 months of the year. Our intergovernmental, this is primarily our grants, and primarily in this particular case, it's a lot of the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration grants for Connect Douglas. You can see we budgeted just under $9 million. We received $6 million. Again, if we don't receive the funding and don't meet the budget, then we were not going to see the expenditure. So it's money in, money out. And a lot of the money that got rolled over into 2020 was a lot of the Connect Douglas grants for the transportation expansion, in which we'll go over in detail on the March report. Then you have your charges for services, which continues. You can see that we did exceed our budget there. However, this is primarily due to the tree replacement fund. We received about $600,000, which we were not expecting. But so we came within budget on charges for services. The courts and law enforcement, we were at 96% of the budget. We did start seeing that we were not going to meet the mark with state court. We saw that a little bit earlier on. We came in a little bit under budget, but all the other revenue categories came in at around budget to have courts and law enforcement at 96%. Our use of property and money, you can see that we did very well in our investment earnings because the market was good. For a majority of the year, we had earned $427,000 in interest earnings compared to the $180,000 that we received in 2018. You get down to miscellaneous, the large number right here of insurance claims. This is due to the DOT warehouse fire that we received insurance money on, and we placed it in this category. So as far as revenues, we've collected in 2019, we ended up closing out the year at $92,482,209 compared to the prior year at $88,193,000.
Thank you.
All right, going into our expenditures, again, you can see this just shows you the 2018 by department. Within each category, general government was about 3% under budget. Judicial was 9% under budget. Public safety was 3% under budget. Public works was 17% under budget. Health and welfare was 4.53% under budget. Parks, recreation, and culture was 6.39% under budget. Planning and community development was 36% under budget. And again, a reason that this one is so large is because in Connect Douglas, there was a lot of grant funding that was placed in Connect Douglas's budget that needs to roll over or has rolled over to 2020. That's why they're showing there a large variance under budget. So that ends the general fund. So pretty much the summary for the general fund, we're still at our policy of 10% of our fund balance going into 2020. And then if you don't have any questions, I'll go into the unincorporated fund for 2019. Any questions?
No, keep going.
Okay. All right. Just don't want to over.
Yep. You're doing fine.
Okay. Unincorporated area special district. Of course, this is our uninked fund, our uninked bucket for all revenues and expenditures that are specifically for the unincorporated area of the county. We finished very well in this fund. We had almost $11.1 million in revenue versus the 10.5 that was the budget. We were at 105% of the revenue. Expenditures, we ended up being 0.52% under budget, which was very good. Again, not only when I came to you in November to go over the 2020 budget that I present to you what my estimates were for the general fund, I also gave you what I felt like was going to be the year-end estimates for both for the uninked fund, the fire and EMS, and the animal control. And good news on this fund, the uninked fund revenues and expenditures performed better than estimated. Revenues were about $280,000 more than what we estimated, and expenditures were actually $60,000 less than estimated. Therefore, it made fund balance $340,000 more. So we ended up with an uninked fund balance of $730,000 when we were expecting just around $300,000.
Jennifer, can we use that money, or is it?
Yes, we can. The caveat I'm going to say to this is that we may need it to actually operate this fund, because if you look up here at your revenues, our permits, our occupational taxes, anything that goes into this fund, or a lot of the, except for insurance premium taxes, is going to be impacted by this COVID-19. So it may be actually a blessing in disguise that we actually had more fund balance than what we projected, because we may not meet the marks in our 2020 budget.
Understood. Good. All right, keep going.
Okay. Our fire protection services and EMS. Again, good news here. We came in at 102% of what we budgeted for in our revenues. We were expecting, it was known and said at the November budget retreat that we knew that the fire department would be over budget due to some overtime. However, the good news is, again, based upon our year-end estimates, the revenues, which when I talk about the revenues, you're talking about the ambulance fees here. They actually performed better at $245,000 more than estimated. Now, expenditures were about $47,000 more than estimated, but because revenues came in so strong, this fund's fund balance was projected to be a negative $491,000. However, because of the additional revenues, our fund balance deficit in this fund is only $293,000. And yes, we have addressed this deficit. We knew this deficit was going to occur, and so we funded in the 2020 budget. We funded some money coming from the Uninc'd fund and from the general fund to make up this deficit. But the deficit is not as large as we thought it was going to be.
All right, keep going.
All right. Animal control services, again, good news. Made the mark on revenues, brought in 100% of revenues. They were about 10% under budget. And when you look at that, what we estimated, the revenues performed about $3,000 more than estimated. There were some expenditures later in the year that caused the expenditures to be about $92,000 more than estimated, but they still have a strong fund balance of about $516,000 versus we estimated $604,000.
Okay. So that excess can, so operationally, that excess is fund balance that they can use during the year. Are there any conditions or restraints on that money?
Yeah, the only way they could use that fund balance would be to come before the board and ask for a budget amendment.
That's all I need to hear. All right, keep going.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, SPLOST trends. Again, this just shows the SPLOST back from 2015, which was an old SPLOST, but this gives you a 5-year picture of our SPLOST trends. Our SPLOST receipts, we would need to bring in about $1.38 million per month to meet our debt service requirement, which we're doing that, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we will continue to do that. We are billing the city of Douglasville. They have been billed, city of Douglasville and Billerica, for their portion of the fire SPLOST. And so we have billed them a total of about $1.1 million, and they have about $700,000 in cash available. Ooh, what happened here?
All right, while you're doing that, real quick, to that point on the SPLOST, I mean, to the public's point, obviously the Board of Commissioners, this current SPLOST was based on Douglas County Board of Commissioners credit, and obviously we carry the weight for our cities. We need their sign off, of course, and they have their participation and they're making their respective payments. But again, I think it's sometimes things get lost that the Board of Commissioners had a pretty strong financial position, and it's maintained that. And it's important to know that this current SPLOST, while it's in city and county, is based on the county's credit. So I want to just, again, one more time, acknowledge that. So Jennifer, what was our credit rating? Can you remember? AA2? Go ahead.
It's a AA2.
Okay. AA2. All right, and that's probably the highest we can get, or almost the highest we can get, being a moderate-sized county. We're just not quite there yet, but it's still a good position to be in. Is that accurate?
Yes, that is accurate. Correct, David?
That's okay. He may be checked out. Keep going, Jennifer.
Okay. All right, now can y'all see the March report on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right. Before I jump into March, another good point to make regarding how we ended December, and for some reason it's not showing up clear on my screen. The healthcare fund. The healthcare fund performed very well. We were able to decrease the deficit that we had in that fund. Now it's only $1 million. We actually had claims come in at about 95% of what we budgeted, so that helped that fund start getting healthier again.
Thanks.
Steady.
Thank you, Jennifer. Steady.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So now, if you can see the March report, I'll do the same thing. Again, I can't stress enough, we say through the end of March, of course, as previously mentioned, this is pre-COVID-19, because even though we had some things and we were in stay-at-home or shelter in place in the middle of March, a lot of our revenues are at least a 1 month lag, if not 2 month lag, meaning that we don't receive the funds from the state for local option sales tax. What we receive in March is for the month of February. Even our courts, just because of the way they have to reconcile their books, what they receive in fines and fees for the month of March, we won't receive until April. So we'll see a little bit of the impact, as stated before, in the April report, and then we'll, really start seeing it in the May and June report.
Well, and I don't want you to lose right there, Director Hallman, is that this report that we're going over, I know probably for the public's sake, it's a lot, but it's an invaluable tool for the Board of Commissioners to review every month. I mean, since I came on board, it was, maybe 3 pages, and it's grown to 15, 16, 17 pages.
Yes.
And as we've grown and as we've advanced in our own maturity financially, how will we do this without this type of data? And then obviously with David Corbin coming on board from now obviously this is backward looking, but also from a finance, which is looking forward. You need data to be able to make good, solid decisions. I mean, you can make a decision, but I'm looking at this information. I'm like, man, how could we have done life without this? This level of analysis. And I know you manage our cash on a weekly basis. And so if I'm looking at this report, I'm looking at this possible, it's like, okay, I only got to hit a 1.3. Right? I know we're coming in at 1.9. It may be soft. It's one of those, well, we may be okay. And so I get there's optimists and there's pessimists. So I could be in the middle somewhere. I just want to know what the data says, because I think that's important about setting expectations. You don't have to oversell it, no undersell it. The data will tell the truth. The numbers don't lie. So I appreciate the accuracy on this data, Jennifer. You know how we are. Just make sure that the math is right. But this tool is so important. I would encourage the public, if they ever have a chance, I know our capper is way too much, but if you ever want to just look at something, this tool, this document will give you a lot of insight. As I say, you can tell the health of any organization, whether it's public or private, by looking at its financials. So I appreciate the effort that you go into this. You make it look easy. You really make this look easy. I'm like, I don't know what it takes for her to pull this off, and she has such a system. And so I want to acknowledge that, obviously. So keep going, Director Hallman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so we'll look at the financial reports. Now we're in 2020. We're at the end of the first quarter of 2020. We'll jump into the general fund first. Overall revenue collections are at 10% of the budget. Of course, as you know, as I mentioned before, effective July of last year, the county's TABT percentage, we received an increase from 52% to 65%. There was an increase in TABT of $425,000, almost $426,000 compared to 2019. Lost, our local option sales tax did experience a minor decrease compared to last year of around $31,000. However, there was an increase in federal government operating and capital grant lines of about $1.2 million. Majority of this was due to the FTA grants associated with Connect Douglas. State court revenues had about $200,000 less than 2019. Insurance claims are less than those of last year, of course, because of the warehouse fire that we had last year, that we, of course, will not be receiving the insurance proceeds this year. Proceeds of capital leases exceed those from the prior year. This is more of a formality with our accounting. Anytime we get into a lease, which we have now, 2 leases have closed for the Sheriff's Department, one for the equipment for their vehicles and one for their servers and equipment in in their operations for their computer needs. And so when we receive those capital leases, we have to do an entry to record that as a full expense. So you'll see that as we go along in this presentation, but don't let it alarm you. It's just something we have to do for GAAP purposes. Then this is the local option sales tax chart. You can see now we're starting into 2020 with about $1.3 million each month for our local option sales tax. This is the main source of revenue that we're going to be keeping tabs on to see what kind of impact the COVID-19 has. Expenditures, overall expenditures are 0.41% under the target of 25%. There are some departments that are over the target. However, as we mentioned in various meetings throughout the year, it's just the timing of some specific expenditures that should smooth out as the year progresses. And, you know, since this is being broadcast, let me go a little bit more in detail on that. If you have a department that, you know, maybe is just a normal size, maybe a small size department, but they have a large expenditure, say they had to go and buy a piece of equipment, or they had a large training item they had to do or had to go to, that could make them look or appear as if that trend continued, then they would be over budget. However, it's just one blip. And as time progresses, their expenditures will smooth out, and they're not over budget. We just set targets based upon what month it is. If it's June, then we say pretty much most departments should be at 50%. In this case, this is through the month of March, so most departments should be around 25%. But there are some anomalies out there that could make a department swing one way or the other. But we, do not see anything right now of any concern that those departments that are showing over the target would not smooth out by the end of the year. The fund balance for the general fund is $5.1 million, with a negative $9.1 million being unassigned. Again, this is just government. As far as fund balance, we will continue to run a negative in unassigned fund balance, actually a negative into total fund balance, just because of the way our revenues are received. We receive our revenues, or majority of our revenues, at the last quarter of the year. So that is why you will see this gradually get lower and lower, and then come October and November, it will bump back up, and we will usually end the year, within our 10% fund balance policy. Cash balance as of the end of March was $33.3 million. Of this, we had $25.7 million in short-term investments. As you know, we did go out and close on TANs the last week of March of $25 million. So we have those funds secured. We haven't had to dip into our TANs yet. We knew that we were borrowing a little bit earlier, and we wanted it to be able to be very liquid, so it's in a Georgia Fund 1 account. And on a weekly basis, that emails that I send to Mark, that he sends to y'all for weekly updates, one of the things that I am including on there is just to kind of give you some comfort and let you know where we stand on our cash balance every week. Contingency summary. This again is just an updated for 2020. We started with 260,000, and these are the different things that we have used the contingency funds for. And at the end of March, we had 170,000 in contingency. Again, this is just the revenues, expenditures, and fund balance for each of the 4 buckets, and this is for the period ending March 31st. And we'll go in detail of each of these different 4 buckets: general fund, UNIC, fire, and animal control, on the following pages. Oh, why is it doing that? Do y'all have your hard copies, or do you want to wait and let me try to get this fixed?
Hey, Jennifer, can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
So if you go back to your page that had the TAN proceeds, just for the commission and the board's sake, I just want to make sure when you see that 25 million, when you see the number that was included in your analysis, those dollars are not new sources of funds. Right. They're actually replacement dollars, right? So they're not sort of additive. They're there, ultimately they've got to be paid back by the end of, what's the maturity date? December, basically first or second week in December. So when you're looking at your cash balances, I want you to keep in mind that, again, those are replacement funds, not necessarily, they're not new sources of money for which that haven't been budgeted. Let's put it that way.
Understood. Duly noted.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Jennifer,
Yes.
What else do we have on our agenda? I want to just,
That was, after this, that will be it.
okay, other than obviously the resolution from this morning. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
All right, if you'll bear with me 1 minute, and there it is.
Fine.
Chairman of the committee,
Yes, ma'am.
is it okay if Jennifer tell us what page she's on?
Okay.
I can just look at it from my phone. Just
Can you see it now?
No, I just got the live. I don't have.
Mhm.
But no, Jennifer, just keep. I've got a
All right,
copy.
what about now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. These are the general fund revenues. You can see that so far we've collected just under $6 million through March in taxes. What makes up that amount is our 2.6 of local option sales tax, almost 1.2 for TABT, and another 1.4 million for prior on digest, meaning that that was property taxes from last year's levy that were not collected or not paid, and then collected and paid to the county until this year. But we've collected 7.28% of the tax revenue. Intergovernmental, we're at 1.4 million, which is 23.48%. And primarily the main source of intergovernmental revenue for this is going to be your FTA Connect Douglas revenue.
Mm-hmm.
Hold on 1 second. I think I'm good. Yes. I'm sorry, that was our IT director making sure I was all right. Yes. I'm good. Thank you, Russ. Total charges for services are $367,000. We've collected 9% of our charges for services. Courts and law enforcement, we've collected $647,000, 12.72%. Our use of property and money is around $60,000, which we've collected 12%. So we've collected so far through the month of March a little over $10 million out of our $100 million budget. So we've collected around 10% of our revenues.
Jennifer, if you could stop there, just have one question. So we've collected, I believe in 2019, we collected 7.5 million, and in 2020, in comparison, we've collected 10 million. Am I correct?
Yes, part of that is the proceeds of capital leases, which is what I call for the sake of terminology, a dummy revenue. It's that a journal entry that I told you we had to do. So when you back that out, we still have collected more revenue, and that's primarily been because of TABT as well as the FTA grants.
Okay. Yeah. Answer the question.
Okay. Move on.
Yes, please keep going.
Okay. All right. Expenditures, general government's 1.17% under the target. Judicial is 2.43% under target. Public safety's 1.36 over target, but again, that's because of the journal entry for the two capital leases that we had to do of 1.3 million. It will smooth out by the time as the year progresses. Public works is 4.69% under budget. Health and welfare is 4.46. Parks, recreation, and culture is 2.65% under budget. Planning and community development is 2.04, and again, is showing that Connect Douglas is over budget or over the target, and that's just primarily because of transportation expansion building, and we see that in revenues coming in at 80%. The uninked fund, you can see where we've collected $832,000. We're at 7% of revenues. They're running about 1.3% under target on their expenditures.
Mhm.
Fire protection, we've collected about 26% of our revenues, and they're about 0.49% under the target. Animal control services have collected around 30% of their revenue, and they're running about 3% under target. This is our SPLOST for the first 2 months of the year. Has been around $2 million that we've collected for February and March. We have in our bond proceeds, we have about $11.5 million left in bond proceeds and interest. We have pay-go money of about $19.3 million. And we're working now on now all the SPLOST dollars that come in for this month going forward will go to fund our debt service for this bond year of $17.3 million. Once that bond debt service is fulfilled and paid, then that the SPLOST can go into our pay-go.
How much do we have total pay-go?
Right now, our total pay-go is $19.3 million.
Yeah, but that doesn't include payments. Is it pure 19.3?
It's pure 19.3.
Good.
Keep going. I'm good. Thank you, Jennifer.
Our healthcare fund, this is what Madam Chair had mentioned earlier. As far as through the month of March, you can see that our total operating expenses, which is our admin and our claims and reinsurance premiums, we should be around 25%, and right now we're at 19% of the budget. So hopefully we can continue to see this trend so that we can gradually get out of the red out of this fund. Mm-hmm. So we're at 6.2% under the target percentage of 25%.
I got you. Jennifer, I'm going to back up more back to the spot. So we got $19 million in pay-go. County Administrator, is this money accounted for in our current forecast of projects?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay, so this must be below the line. If is this below the line? So what will be included in 19 million? Was that a fire station? I mean, what is that?
It's everything. So it's all pretty much just lumped together. It's cash flow. So the bond money, the pay-go, it's all lumped together with the payments, and it's all calculated out.
Okay, so it's just baked. I mean, it's just, but you've already programmed all the money. Is my point. Have you programmed?
Yes,
all
pretty
the
much.
Money that
Yes, we have. It's programmed.
It's programmed. So whether it's part of the bond or whether it's pay-go, it's already programmed 100%.
Yes, sir.
And you're assuming that the board continues down its current path of what's below the line and not. All right, I got it. You good?
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for that clarity. Got it. Keep going, Jennifer. I'm sorry.
And I think David wanted to make a comment as well. I'm sorry, David, I didn't see your comment on my phone.
Yep.
I think I made the comment. It was about the TAN proceeds.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. Keep going, Jennifer.
All right, and then the last sheet is what we're doing is kind of giving you a brief summary of the COVID-19 expenses, the department, the description, like a general description, and the amount that has been spent. And you can see that so far as of last week, all departments in total have spent just under $173,000. As well as Connect Douglas is also looking into right now, because there's some stimulus money out there that he's looking into that helps the county replace not only the expenses for COVID-19, but the lost revenue for the van pool program and the fixed route paratransit and flex system. He's keeping track of that, and as of right now, the lost revenue he's projecting is around $15,000.
Got it. Oh, okay. That's good to hear about the bands. Okay, thanks.
And that sums it up.
All right. Very good. Good stuff. Again, I really appreciate the time and effort that you and your staff go into producing this information. It is necessary for us to be able to make decisions. Allows us to hold various departments accountable from time to time, and really we manage the exception. Just sometimes our comments are limited because it's like, well, it's moving like it should. So, well done, well done. All right, so we got one last item. Is that correct? Miscellaneous, Director
Yes,
Hallman?
that is correct.
All right, so let me go ahead and frame this. This morning, based on our work session, the Board of Commissioners sent it back down to committee for us to come up with a recommendation on how to come up with a final number for the resolution for, I want to call it a funding package for this pandemic. Again, this is just appropriations, and it's to empower Madam Chair and her current duties as executive to move forward. My intent right now is not to get into ideology. It's to come up with a number. We'll let the Board of Commissioners do what they do when we get back to the full board. So, County Administrator, I just want to make sure that we were accurate. Can you break out the numbers that started in the conversation, and then we can reconcile from there? So it was 3 buckets: community health, community stability, and I want to just say overall, hazard pay, or hazard compensation for the sake of the conversation. Can you remind us of the literal numbers? Take your time. We're good.
Yes, sir. So first responders and frontline hazard pay,
Yep.
535,000. Community stability needs, which is seniors, youth, homeless, transient families, CSB, and then utilization of businesses, 325,000. Health stability needs, which is testing kits, facilities, equipment, cleaning supplies, and services, 325,000. Those equal $1,185,000.
$1,185,000. All right. So just stay with the math. So based on 2 presentations that we had not seen prior to coming into this morning, which we have, there was a presentation from Community Service Board where they need an additional what was it? 100,000, 130 per month, get them through their fiscal year based on revenues associated with group health. I'll say, just for the sake of the conversation, some of our exposed population. I'm sure that easy enough to say.
Their presentation actually stated $410,000.
410. All right, that's fine. All right, so 410 plus 200,000 from the Development Authority Chambers joint proposal for us to provide grants to basically 150 businesses that are out there, both in incorporated and unincorporated. That was 200 from us. So that 200 and that 400 gets me to what? 610?
Yes, sir.
Now that's just for those 2 buckets. For the Meals and Wheels and everything else, I'm not certain how they broke that out, right? If these 2, I'm just taking raw numbers, so let's just stay there. Was there a breakout? I don't see any details that gave you more detail. Do you know anything more about where Meals on Wheels or any of that, seniors, how much was going to that in literal dollars?
No, sir, there's no breakout. That would be included in number 2, which is only at 325,000, along with CSB and the businesses.
Okay, so that's all in there. 610 fully. So 610 plus their 3. How much? 3 what?
325.
325. 16. All right. That's, if I add it, just top level number, if I add it as is, even though CSB was in there, I don't know how much was appropriated for CSB. So I'm assuming
it doesn't say.
It doesn't say. All right. So we got CSB. I get it at 410. We've got the other number. I'm just adding that up for a bucket in totality. What about compensation? That's 5 what?
535,000.
535. So 535, 900 gets me to 1.4 million, and plus another 300,000 for this other, which is what, for kits? Yeah, I want to call it testing kits and miscellaneous.
Testing kit, facilities, equipment, cleaning supplies, and services.
Yep. Now, I acknowledge, Madam Chair, the point, and again, we want to get a number. The approach is that if in fact there's some additional funding that may come, at this point, we don't have any resolutions that have been passed from anybody. We don't have any letters to say that we're going to get actual dollars. If in fact I think we're trying to do it is empower you to say, well, here's it's not to exceed. If you don't have to use it, you don't have to use it. At least you have it. If we have some type of offset, I think that we're comfortable, if that makes sense, based on what I heard earlier. But I'm just trying to get to a number. So based on what I see, and again, I'm just putting this out here for the committee. I say, what about this front line, Mark? I got to come back to that. Front line versus first responder. There is a material difference. And I think there is some question like, how did this expand? I think everybody's front line, everybody that's first responders, we're not even going to negotiate it. We're not even going to debate it. It's like, done. But this ancillary, the secondary, the second tier group, while one could argue it, that wasn't the spirit of this. And I think that's somewhat makes it a little, it moved a little bit. I won't argue that, but what I'd like to do is break it apart. So you've got first responders, and everybody's considered first responder. Let that be at 3A. And then for 3B, can we isolate that as well? Because I think that's material. I think to lump them in there as one, it just wasn't the spirit. I just want to be able to isolate them. There's still one big bucket. There's 3 buckets, but I'm just saying within that bucket, which is compensation, can we split the 2 apart as an A
Yes,
and
sir.
an
So 1A would be Sheriff's Department, Fire and EMS, E911, Public Safety.
Yep, public safety, animal control, coroner, anybody that's front line. Yes, that go back to your public safety. Go back to who's all in public safety. Whatever that is in our accounting, let them be. That's your first responders. And again, we'll include your staff directly as relates to fire. All right, so
Yeah,
can you
well,
break that out?
So just to make sure, so 1A, who do y'all want included in 1A specifically? I can name every department we have on here.
1A is the first responders.
Yeah, your first responder, the ones you just named, Mark. The first.
Yeah, but you named departments other than public safety.
All right, so go back.
Landfill, remember, I believe.
All right, so let's do this real quick. Jennifer, within our accounting, there is something called public safety. And there's 4 or 5 goals. Tell me what they are.
Okay. You have in the general fund, it would be the coroner, the emergency management, sheriff detention, sheriff enforcement. And of course, in the fire and EMS fund, it would be, of course, fire department.
Where's my animal control?
And then animal control would be in the animal control services department. Fund.
All right, so they got their own fund, they got their own, so I think they can hold on. Each one of those are standing on the fire, obviously. So I'd say that's your 1. That's your 1A, that group right there.
Not landfill?
Now we can, landfill is an enterprise that has its own. I can be honest, throw it in there. That's fine, Madam Chair.
Okay.
It holds its own.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so add that.
Just to make note, the people at the landfill, the ones that are handling the cash and the cards, they're coming in contact with anywhere from 200 to 800 people a day, which is probably more than anybody.
We're adding them. So add them in there.
No. Yeah, I was just gonna let you know.
Yep. All right. So we're adding them. So let that be
1A. I've got 1A. So 1B would be everybody else.
Everybody else. So we need those 2 numbers broken out. Again, for the sake of this conversation, I will make the recommendation on those 2 numbers. So it's still 1A plus 1B. It still would be a total number, but break them out, please, accordingly.
Okay.
All right. Let's go to 2. Let's deal with 2 real quick. So 2 is what? Community stability?
Yes, sir. Seniors, youth, homeless, transit families, CSB, and businesses.
So the CSB and businesses are like 2 big buckets by themselves, but I get it. They were thrown in there as one. They've got their own footprint by themselves, 200 and roughly 400 collectively. So, but everybody else,
Yeah, that's 610. 610 for
Just for
CSB
those
and
two. Right, just for those two. I don't want to marginalize the youth, the seniors, and the things that we're doing over there. So, you had an original 300. No, let's just put 250 in there for the sake of the conversation. Just put 250. That's all I got right now. Just put 250 for everything else. So that's 250 plus 610.
Okay.
Right. Just the buckets. They're asking for us to sharpen this. So this is what they gave us to work with. All right. And the last one is community health, if I'm not mistaken, and that deals with obviously providing equipment, all those things. It really, I don't want to lose sight of the fact when we talk about testing. I know we're doing testing. A lot of the testing was always conditional. It's really about our first responders, but I think there's this expectation is that, and I think everybody gets it now. Look, you got to test a broader population than our 1,200. You can't get there testing just only our 1,200 employees. There's a bigger number that we need to get to figure out if we're high, medium, or low as it relates to risk. And that will determine how fast or slow we go back into a recovery mode. For Douglas, and again, those are just straight numbers. But I think, what was the number that they put for that?
325,000.
Say leave that as is for right now. If there's additional money that comes down from the feds, it's the one thing that said that we may get it, we should get it. It's another that we actually have a letter. It says that we got it. We're just making sure, Madam Chair, you have what you need. If you ain't got to spend it, don't spend it.
Okay.
You see what we're saying? We're trying to empower. We're not trying to box. So, all right, so Mark,
Yes.
add that up.
Thank you.
Take your time.
$1,720,000. If my math's correct.
Jennifer, need you to confirm.
Yep, that's what I've got.
All right. Y'all not sitting next to each other, are you? Looking at the same?
No.
All right, fair enough.
Sheet off my paper.
No, your paper. All
Like
right,
to phone a friend.
I got you. All right, so 1,720,000. Madam Chair, I'm going to go back to our original conversation that we first started with our delegation, where they asked us, what we thought our number would be. We were somewhere between $1 to $2 million. We've recognized that right now, just based on reality and how the money is coming down from the feds, that we may or may not get it. It may come to the states, and so we recognize if we do this, we're going to take a direct hit. But it's one of those. Well, if the ship is taking water, I think the premise was, well, okay, let's make sure that our citizens have as much of safety rafts and things as we can throw outside the major boat. So I think it's acknowledged the fact that we're assuming that, the assumption is that, and David, this is the point I just want you to hear. We're assuming that whatever we do, we're going to discount all expected revenues. In other words, like if we get it back, great, but we're assuming that we recognize that with this decision that we're going to make tomorrow, that we're assuming that it's as is, and we're going to take a direct 1.72 hit, recognizing we're giving a little, recognizing that you may have to take a little on the backside. We recognize that, but we just want to get to the math. I don't think anybody's delusional about that. What we may get. No, we're going to discount all revenue expectations until we get it in hand, and that we're making a conscious decision that says, no, we know. So I just want to make sure I got the math right. Again, this is not an ideological conversation right now. I think that they're just looking for us to make a recommendation. The board will weigh in tomorrow, up or down, on how they want to do this. Madam Chair, you want to weigh in? Again, this is for you. I'm just making sure that the approach is accurate based on what I heard today, that here are the buckets. All of this is up to. You don't necessarily have to spend it per se in that area in which you have direction. I think the conditions will come out of the board meeting tomorrow as far as, okay, as relates to like the development authority. Okay, now how y'all going to do this for real? Or we want to make sure that we have a voice at the table to make sure our unincorporated is addressed. I think we don't have to solve that here. Even for CSB, obviously you have a direct, obviously, involvement. But even with that, we know that we made a decision to cut off revenue. And so obviously we're trying to make that whole. So again, I'm just wanting to make sure that we're just making a recommendation for the buckets, guys. We're just trying to smooth out the numbers. But the debate has to come for the full Board of Commissioners. We don't carry that. We're just carrying the recommendation back up. Madam Chair, are you okay with that approach?
Yes, we really had to make some very quick decisions with regard to CSB. Again, we had to take about 60 citizens, I call it, off the radar, simply because of the exposure related to COVID-19. There are special needs citizens in our population that, to me, we're one Douglas, and I want to make sure we give them consideration as well. And then also our seniors, and all the lists, the caveat of all the things that were mentioned, and then also our employees, the ones that are first responders, and of course, we'll look at the front line. That'll be secondary tomorrow. But I want to make sure that we at least do our due diligence under these circumstances. This was not planned. COVID-19, this is all new to us. This is a new normal. In fact, it's one of the most catastrophic situations in modern history. So that's something. This is all new to us. So I appreciate, Vice Chairman, if you just, I like that narrative. You don't want to box me in. I appreciate you said up to a certain amount. Certainly the goal is not to exhaust all the money, but at least it gives me some autonomy without being boxed in, and I appreciate that. You mentioned that on numerous occasions this morning and this evening, so that really gives me that executive power that I need to move forward. So I appreciate you. Thank you.
Yep.
Chairman of the committee.
All right, so Director Hallman and County Administrator, did we get the numbers right? All we wanted the numbers for the three buckets. 1, 2, and was it 1 A and B, 2 and 3? It came to a total of 1.72. Can we, for the record, repeat those whole numbers, and then we'll come out with a recommendation accordingly in a motion.
Yeah, so 1A would be emergency management, which they didn't submit anybody. So Sheriff's Office, Fire and EMS, Coroner, Animal Control, Landfill, and we'll split the numbers out, but the total is 535,000. Then 1B would be everybody else that was on the list.
And what's that total? What is that total?
535,000.
Both for 535?
No, both together. We don't have them split out yet. We got to work on the spreadsheet.
All right. Okay, we're gonna split
I
those
don't have
out.
the number.
All right, so I'm going to, again, with the recommendation, we're going to acknowledge that you're going to split those out, just for the record, because we got to do it that way. Because you don't have it right now. Okay. Keep going.
Community stability needs for, this would be 2A, would be CSB and utilization of businesses. That would be 610,000. 2B, which would be 250,000 for all others. So seniors, youth, homeless, transient families.
Sounds good.
And then
Mark, can you
number
stop?
3 would be health stability
Mark,
needs.
County Administrator, back up a minute, Madam Chair.
I want to add something. You know, also we have veteran outreach. I wanted to make sure that we look at our veterans. We have 3 organizations here that, if you know, wanted to be able to give them a little bit, because they're trying to support those veterans that are ones that are homeless, not necessarily homeless, but also outreach, medications, food. So if you could, it's not specific, but I want to make sure we cover our 3.
All right, so Madam Chair, can we just take it to 1,750,000? I'm adding 30,000 for the veterans. I'm just making up a number. So that 50,000 now takes that total group up to maybe what, 300? If I did that right? So Mark, or do you have a higher number? Do you have a different number, Madam Chair?
No, I had a lower number. It really just looking at a
All right, work with me. I got you.
I got you. You hear? Up to, and I won't spend it all, of course.
Okay, sorry, I got kicked off. There for a second.
That's all right. Jennifer?
Okay, so what you were saying, Madam Chair, for 2B, community stability needs, we would include seniors, youth, homeless, veterans, and transient families, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, when you say veterans, because that's a huge wide net, we have 3 organizations here in Douglas County. You have a Vietnam vet organization, Post 145, and your American Veterans, which is Post 118. I'm just trying to, because other than that, you try to grab every veteran in the county. We can't do that, but certainly we have a pot of money. Well, we have needs at all three of those organizations in terms of some funding to help.
Veteran organizations.
Yeah, you said outreach, yep.
We're gonna add another 30,000 to that bucket.
Oh, add another 30, so make it 280.
Yep, because we're gonna round out. Keep going. It should come up to $1,750, but keep going.
That's all I have. Just
All right, and then the third one would be health stability needs, testing kits, facilities, equipment, cleaning supplies and services, and it stayed the same at 325,000.
That's fine.
Mhm.
All right.
So that total would be $1,750,000.
Oh, I'm very good, and I can't see. Well done. Okay, very good. That being said, I don't want to belabor this. We want to obviously get this in print and give staff time, Madam Chair, to sort of crunch out the numbers and come up with their resolution ultimately. So, Director Hallman, are you clear?
Yes, I am.
You got the same numbers he got?
Yes, sir.
And we got them broken out accordingly. Okay. So, can I get a recommendation from the committee?
Vice Chair, can I stop you for just one
Yeah,
second?
please.
Mark, that 1A list you had for the hazardous pay, did you say E911 as well? Because that, again, like I said, that is one that was included in Augusta and other places. They are first responders. They got to take the call. I said they were air traffic controllers. You have.
I may not have mentioned them, but yes, they are included in the one act, which
we good.
is the public safety side.
Yep. You're part of that big bucket.
Okay. All right. I yield back to you, Chairman of the committee.
No problem. Director Holman, can we get a recommendation for a total of $1,750,000 according to the three buckets that the Board of Commissioners instructed us to fill out during this morning's work session according to community health, community stability, and hazardous compensation?
Yes. Are you looking for
Just a motion.
Second.
Yep, just a motion.
Make
just-
a motion.
All right, so we got a motion. Can I get a second?
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this? That means you guys are clear on the actual numbers that we're going to make a recommendation to the full board. It's up to each one of those buckets. Those buckets have been broken out accordingly, and we're going to leave it at that. All right, so I got a motion and a second by way of voice recognition. Me, Vice Chairman, I say aye.
Mark Hill, aye.
Ramona Jackson Jones, aye.
Jennifer Hallman, aye.
Sabrina Cogburn, aye.
All right, so we had a motion and a second. We call the question. We got a 5-0 unanimous vote to send this recommendation back to the full Board of Commissioners for tomorrow's agenda to be approved, according to what we just stated. All right. If there's anything else we need to talk about,
I don't have anything.
Director, County Administrator, are we good?
Yes, sir.
Madam Chair, you have peace?
I'm at peace. Thank you.
All right, guys, if there's nothing else in these, sorry, I know we had some guests. Corbin, please double back with Director Hallman. We'll catch up. If there's nothing else that needs to come before this, this Finance Committee, let this meeting stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.